I'm Dr. Kimberly Manning.
And this is Dr. Ashley McMullen. And you're listening to the Human Doctor Podcast, where we explore the human side of medicine, along with teaching, living, learning, and all things in between. Using the power of storytelling, conversation, and connectedness.
Hey, we're two dope academic internal medicine doctors, but we ain't your doctors. So if you perceive anything we say here as medical advice, no, it ain't that. Also, the things we say, they only reflect our brilliant Black woman magic mind and not our employers.
You could have been anywhere, y'all, but you chose to be here with us, and we appreciate you. Let's go. All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yes, it is. Good evening, good afternoon. Good to see you. How's your week going?
This has been a very busy day, but I will say the entire season has been fulfilling.
Yeah.
And happy. Yeah, I've had a lot of little happy things happen. Of course, I talked at length about Isaiah, having his big moment of becoming a member of Omega Psi Phi. But in that same vein, I told you that I was going to support a friend who was on her journey to becoming a member of Delta Sigma Theta in a alumni chapter. I mean, again, just offering explanatory comments all over the place so that our friends like Dr. McCoy, who are on the other side of the world, were like, what? What is this? But again, for the historically Black sororities and fraternities, you can become a member well out of college and join a graduate chapter. And a really good friend of mine who is just a remarkable woman, Angela Bostic. She's just a leader and she's smart and she's so cool. And I asked her several years ago if she had ever thought about being a Delta. And, she had run track in college and she just said, yeah, I never had opportunity. And as it all turns out, a series of serendipitous meetings led me to meet people in her area. And I flew to Philadelphia and was there for her ceremony and pinned her with her Delta pin on Sunday. Came back at dark 30 and went straight to work when I got back.
Man.
So when I tell you I was on fumes, but joy fumes.
I love that.
Yeah, because it was a non-repeatable life event and got me there.
Yeah. Well, shout out to real adult friendship.
I mean, she is a new friend.
I've heard you talk about Angela before.
Angela was she's not an old friend. And it's kind of like how I think about you. People are like surprised when they realize that like I haven't known you for years and years and years and years. It was just, I read something someone said about a friend that I was like, I'm going to steal that because I love it. This woman was saying happy birthday to one of her friends, and she said when they met, their souls bowed to each other.
Yeah.
It was an immediate connection. And I was like, you know what? I meet a lot of people, but every now and then I meet somebody and my soul bows.
Yeah. And you recognize the feeling. Like,
Yeah.
I've had that happen a few times.
Yeah, right? Because just think about our little 30-minute meeting.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Our souls bow to each other.
And it's not going to be just a fleeting moment.
And I like so many people, but my soul does not bow to everybody. And that's okay, because their soul doesn't bow to me. I mean, it ain't like I'm just the
you ain't selfish with your bows.
I ain't selfish. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the only one who determines who's awesome, but yeah, I just feel like there's almost something divine about mutually that happening. And when it happens, you just sort of know. And I'm just like, wow. People normally think about that in terms of romantic feelings, but I definitely feel that in my women relationships. And I feel super lucky that interpersonally, I'm not afraid to act on it because sometimes if you're really shy or whatever, it's just not your personality to see what happens next.
I also have to give a shout out. I don't know if you were intentionally Deltafied today, but I'm really loving the red fit that you got going on.
Yeah, it is awesome. Red scrub jumpsuit.
Yeah, all day. The maroon glasses, but also it looks like there's some voting happening in Georgia today.
Yep, early. I did early voting today. I have a friend, somebody that I deeply admire, who is a candidate for school board. And he is somebody that I have just watched be remarkable to children. And usually I'm a day of voter. I like to
Mhm.
vote on election day. But I just was so excited to go and vote for him that I just couldn't wait to go and vote for him. So I
Mm.
did. The other people that need to get voted for, I voted for them too. But I really went to vote for Charlie McAdoo, my
Yeah,
friend.
I'm here for that. Local politics is still alive, no matter how disillusioned you might be with what you see on the news these days. There are still good folks doing good things in the community. So that's uplifting.
And somebody just wanting to do it. Regardless of who you are and how I feel about you, people who put their foot into the race to do something like, school board or whatever, you want the ball. And no matter what, you are going to be asked to be somewhere at a time that other people don't have to be there. And that in itself is a sacrifice. So I can only be so hard on some of these folks, but
Yeah, real talk.
yeah, but I'm partial.
And
So,
who isn't?
how are you today?
I'm pretty good. I'm gonna give myself like 4.8.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's up there. This is the bliss of someone who currently ain't got no job. Well, I have a job, but I'm currently away from it. And, I'm now in the back quarter of my sabbatical season. So, having to think now a little bit more intentionally about what it's going to look like transitioning back. And I actually feel good about it. And that's a really rewarding feeling because I was not sure what that energy was going to be like with the transition back on the horizon. And like, I'm actually kind of excited to go back. I think this was the right amount of time for me.
Mm, mm,
And especially now having had my feet back in Oakland for a little bit after having been away somewhere in the Pacific for the last 3 months, it has been nice to just kind of feel myself back into a cadence, cook my own food, and go back to my hairstylist because Mahalia was in need of some rehabilitation.
mm.
So,
I love that. I love it. 4.8. That's great. What did you get done to Mahalia? Because I see she looks very clean.
so I got two strand twist put in, which I really like as a protective style for my hair. And I gotta say, she looks pretty good.
I love that. Looks gorgeous. The scalp
Thank you.
looks really nice and squeaky
Mm-hmm.
clean there.
Mm-hmm. See those nice straight lines, those things that I cannot do for myself.
I like it. Well, I am a 4.4.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's a little on the
A
lower end
little
for
bit
me.
lower for me, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just because the things I've had to do today, each one of them gives me enough space in between to not get anything else done.
Mm.
Yeah. So I mean, like I have my month mentoring session that I do with the students at Tuskegee, and that's this evening at 8.
Phew.
I am going to probably finish this up and then I like kind of want to cook something, but I don't really know what I can cook that quick that.
Beans and rice.
Mm, yeah, but we don't be eating carbs like that because we over 50, unlike you. Um, but yeah, yeah, but it's all good. It's all good. These are great problems to have because I will tell you that 90 to 95% of what I do professionally is what I want to do.
Say that.
Now that is huge.
Yeah.
It's very, very few things that I do professionally that I don't want to do, that I'm doing because I just have to do it. Like I really like to take care of patients at Grady. I really enjoy working with medical students. I enjoy meeting with students and helping them win. I enjoy preparing a talk for some session or something like that. I did a 4-hour writers workshop for fourth year medical students yesterday after having been up like I was on like 3.5 hours of sleep.
Mm.
I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. So busy hits different when it's what you want to do.
Amen. Amen.
I got some rest coming ahead of me. I don't have a really busy day tomorrow, so I'm gonna get some rest.
Well deserved. Remember, it's resistance. So
And reparations, power to the people and power to the pillow.
that's that's good.
Power to the pillow. Yeah.
Well, my good sis just told y'all she's busy today. You know, she got a lot going on, but still made time to prioritize this time on the mic
That's right.
for you and me and all of our listeners. So I am particularly grateful to hear a story on this fine Tuesday. So, sis, hopefully you got one in the back pocket for us and a what to share for this episode.
That's really funny you say that. I've been sitting here thinking the whole time, okay, y'all, here's a confession. This is a real, true confession. I am so busy that I was not really sure if I was the one telling the story.
this this is epic. This is great. I love
And
this.
all I love, I was not really sure until right this moment. Woo, that's funny. Okay.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. All
Uh,
right.
but yeah, I got a little something for you.
Okay. See, this is what you want. This is the person when it comes down, we're in overtime. We didn't know we was
Oh
gonna be
Lord.
here,
Did you see
but
how
she's
like
still
calm I
ready.
was? I was just listening and I was like,
Hmm.
that's really weird that she doing the intro because normally I think me when it's her. But and then I was like, well, maybe this is not the little part before the little interlude. Maybe she's just about to say something else. But
Yeah, no, I
okay,
saw it in your eyes, but no, you kept it,
thank
you kept
you.
it
Yeah,
together.
you see, I'm dead serious. Okay. So the what actually is adjacent.
Adjacent. Okay.
Mhm. I was just kind of thinking a little bit about some experiences I've had where something is happening right next to something and you just don't see it because of who you are or how your life is or how your life is designed. I imagine that there are people in San Francisco proper who have no idea what's going on in the East Bay.
Hmm.
Step foot over there, don't know what's going on, don't know nothing about the bookstore with the bourbon drinks in it. I don't know nothing about that.
Yep.
And some of us are sort of wired to be curious about other people and discovering other things. But I do think that there are lots and lots and lots of people who are adjacent to like an entirely different world that would open their mind up, but they just haven't tapped into it.
Mm,
So that is what I'm thinking about. And I have two little stories that come to mind as a result.
okay.
Both of them happened in a clinical environment. So I was on the wards at Grady. As you know, I take care of patients on the inpatient service with residents and medical students and all them people. And on this particular day, the residents had gone to conference and I had another patient to see. So I was alone. I was rounding alone. I walk in and I see this patient. I had seen him the day before, and he was a man with whom I did not have racial concordance. He was a white man, but we did both have freckles. He had a really strong Southern accent, and there was something familiar about his accent though, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. And the day he came in, he was short of breath, so I couldn't really ask. But on this day, he was feeling a little better, and as I was coming in to examine him, he was there for a respiratory issue. So I was preparing to listen to his lungs. As I'm untying his gown, I say, you know what I was wondering? I was listening to you talk, and I was wondering, where are you from? He was like, oh, I'm from a little small town. You wouldn't even know it. And I was like, okay, where? And he was like, it's in Alabama. I said, is that right? Where about in Alabama? He says, I'm from Opelika. I said, Opelika, that's in Lee County. And he turned around and looked over his shoulder at me. I said, I know Opelika. He said, you don't sound like you would know Opelika. Where are you from? I said, I'm from California. He said, why do you know Opelika? I said, Opelika is probably about 25 to 30 minutes away from Tuskegee. I went to Tuskegee. He said, "You went to Tuskegee?" I said, "Yeah." He was like, "Oh." He said, "But you're from California." And I said, "Yeah, I'm from California." What in the world would make somebody go from California to Tuskegee? And so I told him, I said, my mom and dad are from Alabama. My daddy's from Birmingham. My mom's from Tuskegee. They went to college there. My grandparents went to college there. And when it came time for us to go to college, we all went, we all looked at historically Black colleges because that was sort of what we knew. So I really wanted a historically Black college experience. And it was in my family. So I came to Tuskegee. He was just like, "Oh, wow." So, he was doing this thing where I really remember, like, as I would ask him questions and we would talk, when I put my stethoscope down, he would go quiet and take his breath. And then when I lifted my stethoscope, he would start talking again. So it was kind of cool. So I kind of finished up examining him and talk a little bit about his lungs. And then I kind of sit at the bedside chair. And he said, "Can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Yeah, you can ask me a question." He's like, "Well, I don't want you to take this the wrong way." And I said, I probably will because what you just said, but okay,
Yeah.
hit me." He says, like, what would make somebody like go to a historically Black college? I I don't mean this to be offensive. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is he's like for the most part, when you look at the lists of like what's all the very best colleges in the, United States, and I don't know, he's like, to me, it just seems like if you were going to go from California and you were going to travel all the way to another state, I don't mean, I guess he said, "I didn't even finish college." So, but he said, "But I, I don't know. This is something I've always wanted to know." I said, "I appreciate you asking me that." I grew up in California, so there were no historically Black colleges in California. And I remember coming to visit Tuskegee with my family and how it always felt a little bit magical. How I would watch my father move in spaces with all kinds of people, Black people, non-Black people, corporate people. And there was just something about him in the environments he was in, and my mom in the environments that she was in, that made me wonder where that came from. But it was the more I paid attention, the more it seemed to be something that a lot of people who attended historically Black colleges had in common. They seemed very, very okay in their skin. And not that that's the only path to being okay in your skin, but it was just a really interesting thing to watch. And it was kind of like I grew up knowing it. I said, but mostly it was the magic. He said, "But it's not the real world."
Mm.
I know that's what made it magical. So I got to go to school and learn all the stuff I needed to become a doctor beforehand. But I didn't have to come out of class or sit in class and think about how to be or how I was talking or what my hair looked like beyond just the way that you care about what your hair looked like because you got a crush on somebody. I mean, I said, and beyond that, it was just a historical place and it was magical. It was really magical. And he was like, "Wow. It's crazy that all that time that I was in Alabama and all the time that I go back to Alabama to Lee County, I've never ever gone to Tuskegee." And I was like, "Yeah, that is crazy." And I was like, what would make you never go?" He was like, "I don't know." He's like, "I guess I just never saw a reason to go. But now that you're telling me it's magical," I said, "and it's magical no matter who you are, because it's actually magical for you to set foot and see what's happening in this world that you think is actually a little subpar. Because from what you told me, you kind of think it is. But that's
Mm.
not your fault. It's kind of what you've been told."
Yep.
And he was like, "Wow, you know what? When I go back to Alabama, I'm gonna drive past Lee County and I'm gonna go over to Macon County and I'm gonna go to Tuskegee." And I was like, "That's what's up." And he's like, "And that is because I met you and I'm going to see it in a whole different way than I would see it just because I met you." And I was like, "That's what's up. And I'm going to think about you when I go to Opelika." And that got me thinking a lot about when people are adjacent to each other, just one small thing that you tell somebody it could just change the whole way you see something. But it can also make somebody feel so seen and so happy and proud of who they are that somebody noticed that it just changes the game, but also builds a strong therapeutic alliance. So this last little piece I'll tell you is short.
Mhm.
And I thought of it because the same way me and that guy were trying to figure out where we were from, I was examining a patient and the patient was speaking to me in this very formal English. It was not a British accent. It was definitely something that had some British influence. It was giving me definitely like the West Indies, Caribbean vibes. So I look at the patient and I was like, okay, you are not from Atlanta. And he looked at me and he said, you are not from Atlanta. I said, I am not from Atlanta. He said, okay. He said, how about we try to guess, see who can guess where the other one is from first. I was like, wow. He's like, you're not going to guess where I'm from. So I'll probably guess you first. I said, okay, let's try. So he looks at me and he goes, you're from a big city. And I said, I am from a big city. And he's like, say something else. I said, something else. And then he goes, okay, you're not from the North. You're not from New York. You're not from Philadelphia. You're not from Washington, D.C. It's not the Eastern Seaboard. And I was like, okay. And he goes, you're not from Chicago. I was like, wow, okay. He says, you're from California. I said, wow, that's pretty good. He said, are you from Southern California? I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really, really good. He said, yeah. He said, because Southern Californians, you guys talk a little proper, but you're a little bit country. I was like, oh, that's funny, which is true. So I laughed. He's like, okay. I said, so, okay. Wherever you are, it's got some sort of influence of where your books had the King's English. And he was like, okay. And I said, let's see, something in the Caribbean. And he says, well, I guess sort of, but not really. So when he said that, I said, okay, now I know where you're from. He's like, no, you don't. I was like, yes, I do. Because the fact that you corrected me when I said the Caribbean means you're from Guyana, South America.
Mm.
He was like, wow, 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 wow. I said, yeah, you're from Guyana, South America, because people who are Guyanese, they make it very clear that they are not from French Guiana, they're not from Ghana, they're from Guyana, South America, and it's not in the Caribbean, it's in South America. And he was like, tell me how you know that. I said, I know that because I asked the patient where he was from, and I guessed that he was from Jamaica.
Mm.
He admonished me. And by admonish me, I mean he dragged me by letting me know. And then he asked me if I knew where Guyana was, and I said, I think it's somewhere in the Caribbean, and he dragged me. But that had happened years ago.
Mm.
And that little experience, it allowed my patient to feel incredibly seen. And I have been to places very near Guyana, and I have talked to people who are from Guyana, but had never allowed myself to be curious enough to not only ask questions, but hold on to a piece of it to be able to reflect back to somebody. But that made our therapeutic alliance so good.
Mhm.
The fact that I knew where Guyana, South America was, it was really cool. And the thing we found out that we had in common also is that when I told him I went to Tuskegee, he said, people know Tuskegee for something super unfortunate, and people know Guyana, South America for something super
Ooh,
unfortunate.
true.
And if you have been there and been loved by people there, you realize that that's the furthest thing from your mind when you're there. But the world, when you say it, that's the first thing that comes to their mind. And I was like, that is the truth. Because when I Googled it, that was what came up.
Yeah.
And I'm not even gonna like give it the justice of saying it on this podcast.
Nope. No need.
So I just know a lot of really smart and dope people who are from Guyana, South America. And
Yes.
I am kind of wondering if my other patient ever made the trip one county over to see a magical place called Tuskegee.
Did you ever make it to Obiaka?
Opelika.
Opelika.
Opelika, you drive through Opelika to get to
Ski.
Tuskegee. So I've and Opelika is right next to Auburn. So
Hmm.
I've been to Opelika multiple times. But I wish I had time to talk to people about how people from historically excluded or ignored backgrounds, they go to the places where they are not welcomed or
Hmm.
where that are considered majority. So we've been there. We've been to their spaces, but they haven't been to ours.
Hmm.
No matter how
Hmm.
close they are, like they could be like right there.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
well, first I'll say this is why you win awards and do commencement speeches because you came ready despite not being ready, and I'm a little jealous, but that's okay. The other things that this makes me think about, I remember there was a couple episodes back where you mentioned, you had learned the greeting for Ramadan from a staff worker in the clinic, and you were able to share that with a patient and use that to build connection. And we've talked about travel recently, and I'm thinking about like, not everybody gets the opportunity to travel widely and experience a lot of places far. But a lot of times we intentionally make our worlds very small, but not even taking the opportunity to kind of see what's immediately around us. The comment about the East Bay is real. Everybody's been to San Francisco, but not everybody has been to places, across the bridge for various reasons. But even just creating safe spaces for us to just ask questions. I
Mhm.
love that patient felt safe enough to ask you about the HBCU experience, because I know that there are plenty of folks that perhaps work next to us
Mhm.
in our same offices who really don't understand why someone would choose to go to an HBCU, even in 2026.
And he asked a lot of really compelling questions. I loved that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I said, "Do you like have any friends who are black?" And he was like, "Yeah, I do." I said, "Okay, so have you ever been invited to something by one of your black friends and it was something that was predominantly black where you came?" And he was like, "Yeah, actually my coworker invited me to whatever." I was like, "Okay, so when you went, how was it?" He was like, "It was fine. It was cool. Their family was there. It was like a lot of people there. His daughter was graduating and everybody was there. And I was like maybe one of one or two non-black people there." I was like, "Okay." I said, "And it was cool, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, it was really cool. I had a great time. Everybody was nice." I said, "Okay. Now imagine if you had to stay there for 4 years. And while you were there in that same space, exactly how you felt while you were there, you had to also try to figure out how to like acquire knowledge in what would become your career. But you couldn't leave that cookout. You had to stay in that environment." And he just stared at me. He was like, "That description makes me understand why you went to a historically black college."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Yeah." Because literally for some of us, especially if you did not grow up in an environment that was, racially diverse, going to a big majority institution is like you going you going to that cookout and being there for 4 years, having to sleep there, wake up, go to class, talk to people, make friends, figure out the potato salad, figure out the collard greens, what's up with chitlins, all that. You're gonna have to figure out all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of gets cognitively exhausting for people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the real world is a lot of that.
Yeah. And that applies to a lot of socially congruent spaces.
Mhm.
I think there's just more rhetoric around like that those are things that reinforce division.
Hmm.
And so it can be, again, emotionally exhausting to have to explain like why we need those spaces.
Well, I like to think that your brain is cooking. You're an emerging adult when you go to college, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it isn't just the place, it's the place and the time that you are there. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're there while you're emerging as an adult, a lot of things solidify in you so that when you step into the regular world, you just are gonna not second guess some things that you might have second guessed.
Yeah.
or even kind of be, the same way that my patient was talking to me with his, opalika twang. I don't think it's real ambiguous when people hear me talking that I'm a black woman. Like it just ain't.
It's not. It sure isn't.
It ain't, I know that I understand standard English. I know how to be formal, but like all of us, I'm okay with sort of relaxing into me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think the more people relax into who they are and separate things into formal and informal instead of just, black and white and this and that, whatever, it gives everybody the permission to do that.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
not
Yes.
everything is formal, right? Like
Yes.
day one is formal, and then day
Hmm.
two, you kind of figure out what your vibe is, which is why you can ask me on day two, what made me choose a historically black college?
Hmm.
That'd be cool. We've had an encounter,
Yes.
right? You ain't gonna ask
Hmm.
me that maybe on day one. And maybe you will if depending on what the report is like. But
Absolutely.
I just think it's an opportunity for people to think about what are you adjacent to? What magic are you adjacent to?
Hmm. Across the board.
Literally. And honestly, I had been to Oakland before, like as a kid, but I had been back to San Francisco multiple times as a grown up. But when I went over the bridge to meet you, it was like another world. It really was a lovely, lovely world. And I love San Francisco too. But I was like, wow, this is a whole completely different vibe over here.
Yes.
And who is missing that magic? And that metaphor is for everybody everywhere. There's some magic somebody is missing in Boston and with a neighborhood right over. There's some
Hmm.
magic somebody's missing in Chicago. There's some magic somebody's missing in Virginia, in DC, in Florida, wherever they live. And hopefully this will like prompt you if it wasn't modeled for you to be curious. I think that's a big problem. Some of us as parents, we don't model it enough.
Man, it's easy to get grounded in very singular and fixed narratives around people, places, ideologies. And really, the only way to expand that is to connect with someone on the other side.
Yep. Yep. And then you find out that through that little fleeting moment, it'll give you a piece of information that immediately allow you and another person to just click, allow
Mm-hmm.
your souls to bow to each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way that the souls bow to each other as doctor and patient. And sometimes it's in the form of Ramadan Mubarak. Sometimes it's in the form of you from Guyana, South America.
Sometimes it happens immediately, and sometimes it takes work. And I love that the space was such that you guys could show up authentically enough to make the connection happen that might not have happened otherwise.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Me too. People don't suck as much as it seems like they do sometimes.
I agree.
Even people that are different from you. They just haven't been created, given a space rather to ask a dumb question. Because we're often hurting, and when we're hurting, it ain't no space for that. Just
Amen.
trying to live, man.
Amen.
But you know where we not gonna be hurting?
Nah, sis. Where might that be?
At the Society of General Internal Medicine National Meeting, where
Mm-mm. Mm.
for the third time in a row, your girls are going to be on the mic live.
Girl, that's next week.
That is next week. So we might want to come up with a plan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's time to do that.
Yes, but you know what? We always come through. And
Hmm.
if you get a muscle for storytelling and listening and reflecting, then there's always a little delight on the ready.
And you know what I'm expecting to? There might be one more than one soul bow that occurs at S Gym.
Oh, I can't wait.
I think there's going to be some real connections made.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing where our souls bow. And I'm looking forward to all of the individuals who will join us. Come up to us and let us know what you are on a scale of 1 to 5. And, just connect with us because at the end of the day, Human Doctor Podcast is about humans, man.
Amen.
Yep. Well, I get to do more meetings after this. Mm, and you get to read all those books behind you.
Yes, yes, yes. I've got some work ahead of me as well. Lots of
Yes,
pages.
yes.
Yes.
And we better come locked and loaded with some books to talk about in on our live recording because
Oh,
all
girl.
these books we've been talking about. We haven't brought up any books in the last couple episodes. So
I know.
let's have
Say
some
less.
locked and loaded.
Yep, for sure.
All right, sis.
All right. That wraps up this week's episode of the Human Doctor Podcast.
Special thanks to our favorite brother gastroenterologist, Dr. Chuma Obiname, for the beats. Shout out to the Dr. Ashley McMullen for editing and production.
Mad love to our podcast family at The Nocturnist and the Clinical Problem Solvers, our Med Twitter fam.
And especially shout out to all of you, our listeners.
Until next week, remember,
we see you and you are enough. Holla!